Well, welcome back to the Mythic Dungeon International. If you'd like to support WoW Esports, whether it's the MDI or AWC, be sure to check out the in-game toys in the Transmorpher Beacon and Horde and Alliance fireworks. Proceeds will go towards the prize pool at the end of the year for the global finals. I'm Jack, and joining me at the desk right now is Sloot, Nagura, and Sour. So we start this grand finals for the third Cup of West. At this point, we're starting off with a very fun combination of dungeons and affixes, Sloot, for our grand finals.
Oh man, this is the all-star lineup here with Waycrest followed by Motherlode. Underrot, not too bad for these teams. Well, I mean, Method and A finally overcame their fear of Underrot, so to speak. But Waycrest, Motherlode, just really nasty dungeons coming up. Going to be a lot of fun.
I'm excited to see it, and there's going to be a lot of big pulls and a lot of big damage that needs to be healed up as we start Game 1 of our grand finals between Method NA and Method EU.
So on this dungeon, we've seen what Method EU can do. We've seen the prowess of their pull. We've seen the strength of that Raw plus third reaping. And at this point, Method and A have to do that. They know Method EU, that strategy. They know what they're going to do, and they have to try to match it up, Nagura.
Yeah, most definitely. We've seen Method and A do a little bit of a lighter version of the Method EU strat once they were playing against a team that was very far behind, so they chose to do a little bit of safer pulls. But we also saw them do those riskier pulls from Method EU and failing to them. They had some full team wipes coming in on Method and A side, trying to mimic the strategy of Method EU. So we'll see how they do this time around as they both engage the Triad boss, use their Bloodlust, and pull the trash from the left into the right on top of the boss.
Yeah, no surprise. We're going to see really similar strategies coming out of these teams early as Nerf Clap chunks quite low already on the Method and A side, making sure to move out of the exploding bile from those bile toads on the ground. Method EU already moving over to Sister Milady in the phase 1 right there as Method and A follows suit. So these teams obviously pretty neck and neck. We just started the match here, but it's going to be all about the trash, especially in the courtyard coming up.
Most definitely, especially in this fortified Raging Grievous affix combination. It's just the Nerf Club actually dropping very low on Method and A side. I hope they can recover here as he's just has so much Grievous stacks. He has the other debuffs on him, which is so hard for JB to heal him back up here, but they should be able to recover as the Bloodlust is still going.
Yeah, JB certainly on the back foot here right now, just barely finally getting Nerf Clap over that 90% threshold for Grievous. Azalea is certainly having a much easier time, even able to put out just a bit of damage here and there. Well, as you can see, those Wraths being spammed into Solina for the second round of the Witches here in the Triad. Final she'll go down in just a moment as Method and A approaches Solina as well, trying to beat that next mind control, and they actually managed to do it, so they've caught up just a bit to Method EU, and JB has finally managed to stabilize the group.
Yeah, so Gingy actually getting mind control on Method EU side. You usually don't want your rogue to get mind controlled because they do so much damage. We've seen people just get one-shot by a mind controlled rogue in the past, so definitely luck by Method EU to not have anyone die here as the rogue got mind control. They only have Sister Briar left here as well for Method and A, but Method EU just slightly faster.
Just slightly faster than their NA counterpart as Sister Briar goes down here. Now, we know Method EU is going to grab, if I'm not mistaken, 2 guards, 2 captains, and they're going to bring them right over, including the Rune Weaver, if I'm not mistaken, and they're going to bring them right over to the beginning of the dungeon in the lobby and cleave them down with the essences there. Now, we are in that Raging Affix, so this is where it starts to get really quite hairy. Don't say anything, Nagura. Quite hairy for the tanks as things will start to enrage, so sub 30%, they will deal 100% increased damage. A lot of danger that comes in for the tanks, so at some point they're going to have to play a fair bit defensively, start kiting and getting peel support off of their team in the form of ROPs, Ursula's Vortex, Typhoons, etc.
Yeah, this build is pretty smart just because of the fact that the Solar Senses actually do have quite a lot less HP than the rest of the mobs that he pulled on top here. So the raging will be staggered. Not all of the mobs will rage at the very same time. You get the Solar Senses first, and then you will get the rest of the mobs afterwards. So you don't have to deal with all of it at the very same time. Once those guards and the captains are raging, you can see the Ring of Pieces come out to be sure that the tanks are allowed to kite and have some more room, because they just do so much tank damage.
They do a huge amount of tank damage. Not seeing too many soothes come out of the rest of druids right now. If they soothe some of these remaining mobs, then the tank can actually quite safely go back in and help with the damage, but they're choosing to just DPS instead. So whatever works best for them, as Azalea is pumping just a bit of healing to now. Now, important to note here that Nerf Clap did proc his Bonsomni's Bargain Trinket, that cheat death trinket, earlier on the very beginning of the fight that we saw with Sister Selena, where JB fell behind. So not going to have that available for what will be quite heavy tank pulls coming up with Soul Goliath once they proc that second reaping. But first reaping comes first, so 19% on the board for both teams. We're going to see this first reaping proc here in the courtyard with this quite massive pull coming out of both sides.
Yeah, we see Method and A actually doing a little bit of a bigger pull as to pull one Thorn Shaper on top of this pull, as Method EU does not do pull the Thorn Shaper. They are in front of the Goliath here. So Method A slightly bigger pull, just one more mob compared to Method EU, but still a huge pull coming out. You do need to see the Soothe coming out and also just AoE control, AoE to see from those teams as all of those mobs start raging at the same time. We see the Reaping Wave also come in into this courtyard and just the Ring of Pieces and AoE stands come out.
Method NA finally dealing with their first Reaping Wave as Method EU does the same thing. 28% apiece for both of these teams. Really neck and neck here. No deaths across the board. Just the only difference really is Nerve Clap's Trinket not being available for tanking could be quite relevant coming up for that second Reaping with the Soulbound Goliath, making sure that all the trash they kill sits here in the courtyard so that all of the Reaping that spawns in the second wave is from the courtyard and they don't risk a despawn on the Soulbound Goliath when they do pull it along with Matron Brindle.
Yeah, we see the Reaping Souls are about to die for both of those teams. Method is slightly ahead in trash percentage here, but both of those teams do have to clean this courtyard. I'm not completely sure if Method EU will pull the Thorn Shapers in the back corner. We've seen Method NA pull these before, so you can see those double Thorn Shapers there, but Method EU kind of choose to not pull them, as they actually do a huge pull from the inside out, as now just went inside, pulled some of those mobs out. You see the Ring of Peace helping there to kind of stack them up and also make the Gorgers not jump around.
Yeah, Method EU misses one of the Infest casts. It does infect now, so 2 more maggots will spawn in just a moment there as the Thorn Shaper finally gets killed for them and does pass off its... I thought it got Soul Fetish off. Okay, so I guess not. It must have killed it right before it got off. So none of these Gorgers have a Soul Fetish buff. Fortunate enough for now. Don't want that extra damage and haste on the mobs. Lady taking just a fair bit of damage here from the Method NA side, of course, with all the random spit debuffs that go out from the Maggots, but they do well to interrupt those Infests and not get any of the players infected with a double Maggot spawn. We do have the pull in the corner, Nagura, as you were mentioning, for the triplicate mobs from Method NA side, looking to proc their second Reaping and get started on that Soulbound Goliath, but Nerve Clap getting a bit smacked around by these raged mobs as Method EU procs their second Reaping.
Yeah, so Method is going to pull the mini boss plus the boss here at the same time with their 40% Reaping Wave. Now this is a very difficult pull, and you got to watch out for Now's HP, because he's the one who needs to tank all this damage. This mini boss specifically with the Thorn Barrage, as you can see it go off, just does so much damage on top of having the Reaping debuffs, on top of having the boss hit you. So just got to watch out for his HP here.
Yeah, but Fragments, of course, makes quick work of those mobs. You can see the mass amount of unholy DK damage coming out there. The only thing left is just a bit of health on Matron Brindle. That was, of course, soothed off when she enraged at 30% by Zelia, so quite safe for the tank here. Now, of course, stay in front of the boss and not reset it in the fire for as long as possible, just to make sure that everyone can stay in there. DPS, Zelia is not taxed with healing, and he too can DPS, but at some point, those stacks will get out of hand, and we'll need to go in. Shakib taking a bit of a hit there, pops his own CD to try and stay alive, as Method NA has done the same pull, and Nerve Class jumps to the other side of the boss just to help a bit with the damage intake.
And watch out here as Nerve Clap drops so low from having the Thorn Shaper barrage on top of him from the mini boss. You see the Thorn Shaper here also started raging as they stunned the Thorn Shaper to make sure he finished him off. And now they need to dispel the raging from the mini boss, as you saw the Soothe come out of JB. Now JB unfortunately didn't go into cat form as he got hit by these thorns, which is something you definitely got to watch out for, because you don't want to be stunned as a healer in this boss. Method EU, of course, 20% ahead as they pulled the boss earlier, but the trash percentage still very similar. Just 2% difference between those two teams.
Yeah, I mean, Method EU, they were, what, maybe about 10% on one sister ahead on the Triad boss, and now they're a good 25, almost 30% ahead of Method NA here. And I mean, they're just slowly pulling more and more ahead. They've done, I don't want to say the exact same pulls, but pretty similar pulls worth of trash. So Method NA, Method EU, excuse me, just having a bit easier of a time grinding through, a bit more coordinated time, a bit higher DPS. Everything is just a bit better on Method EU side right now on this boss as they reach 1/4 health remaining on the Soulbound Goliath, 57% for Method NA. We know what's coming after this Nagura. We know that there's the preparation, of course, sub 60% in the Rawls Hall area, and then after that, they will, well, at least Method EU will, I think both teams will, proc their third Reaping, pull it on the entirety of the trash of Rawl and Rawl himself.
Yeah, this point after this boss will be very important, because it depends on which team can actually pull it off, because it's just so much damage on the tank, it's so much stress on the healer to keep the tank alive, to keep everyone else alive, to have this perfect CC rotation of Ring of Peace, AoE stun, Vortex come in, to make sure once the mobs are raging, you actually see them and the tank is not getting one-shot by all of them. And you also want to make sure that the DK delays the damage as much as possible, so the mobs are not raging for too long. So this pull is very dangerous, and we will see if both of those teams can actually pull it off. We saw Method EU do it, but Method NA struggled a little bit with it in the past.
A little bit's an understatement. They had 2 full wipes on Raw coming back in as well, so Method NA still needs to prove that they can do it. Only 2 teams that have done this successfully is Team D in the East, one of the Chinese teams 3 weeks ago now, I believe.
Yeah.
And of course, Method EU yesterday pulled it off as well, quite spectacularly. So we'll have to see if Method NA this time is up to the task, as they've now finished off Soulbound Goliath, doing their own massive haul pull here and making sure that they're ready for that sub 60%. Method EU already working on this, downing that last enraged peasant and getting ready to set up their pull now. Really key to this pull is two things. One is to kill the mobs all at the same time so that the Reaping spawns pinpoint and they potentially drop combat for a moment. And Xaylia needs to have a drink of mana right before they get in that roll room.
Yeah, the problem here is Xaylia is actually dropping very low as there's a raging spit debuff on him. And now Xaylia needs to drink. Okay, so they're waiting a little bit here for Xaylia to get the mana back up. And now we're going to see this big pull from Method EU come in. They're waiting a little bit just to have the setup right, because this is difficult and they need to make sure everything is going perfectly. As now goes in, pulls all the mobs on top of each other, and they're not actually doing the pull yet.
They're not. But I'm equally excited as you are, Nagura. So Nerf Clap dipping just a bit low here on Method NA side. They're kind of rearing up to the same pull right now. 57% on the board for them. Method EU at 56%. They definitely have more than enough trash here needed to proc their Reaping. And usually towards the end of this mob, they start to kind of kite and backpedal them right in front of Rawl's Hall area. Not sure if they're going to do that this time. I really would be surprised if they all of a sudden switch strategies from a very supreme strategy that they had. Method NA kind of teetering on that 59%, 24 seconds on Bloodlust as they pull the presumably final mobs that they need before doing this pull. You can see Nerf Clap starting to slowly backpedal and kite towards Rawl's room, wanting to kill all those mobs at the same time, as if one of them dies kind of off beat of the other ones, they will spawn the Reaping wave and then still be stuck with two of these Mastiffs. So very important that all these mobs at the same time, as a huge chunk of damage comes in on Fragments and Mirrors, but able to be healed up quickly by Xaylia.
Yeah, those marksmen, just all of them raging at the very same time, and the survivalists, you definitely want to make sure that you have a clean run here, as now we're probably going to see this pull as now uses his speed potion, pulls all those mobs on top of Ral. We see the Bloodlust come out, and now you got to watch out for Frag's DK damage. You just got to watch the damage meters, see if you can do the 1 million DPS again.
And Method NA answering on the other side right now. Both Bloodlusts are active. A lot of damage coming in on the tanks as Nerf Clap dipping so low. Huge amounts of healing coming out of JB and Xaylia right now. Huge amounts. Now dipping so low, 2%. Ring of Peace defensively goes down on the Method EU side as Method NA rears to the other side. Looks like Method NA is mostly cleaned up this pull, but Mirrors goes down on the Method EU side. Xaylia does not have time to battle res him. Huge amounts of damage coming from the frontal from Rawl right now as Xaylia dips below the 50% mark. Needs a second to try and get Mirrors up right now, but there's so much damage coming in, and Xaylia hangs on at 4% HP, transforming into bear form and running around in circles as Fragments dips out from the swirly in the ground, and they manage to stabilize and get Mirrors up. Method NA pulls this off a fair bit cleaner and pushes ahead of Method EU on the Raw percentage.
That almost got into a disaster. Method EU that as Mirrors goes down, and Frag not casting the battle rest for so long. Xaylia was busy healing himself, healing the tank, and DKs have battle rests too, but it took him so long to get Mirrors back up. Well, on the other side, Method NA just had such a cleaner run, but they're still struggling as they have those maggots here just casting the spit on everybody. You see the Grievous on all of them go out. Yoda actually dying as he doesn't have cheat death available, and Lady dropping so low as well as he goes down too. They do have 2 battle rests available, but JB is struggling to heal himself up.
Both battle reses come out right now out of Method NA, so it's just not stable on either side here. Another spit debuff on Xaylia right now as he just ends up healing the rest of that off. Now, of course, gets the cleave, the curse that immediately gets dispelled from the Rune Weaver from the kitchen. So both teams not really stable as Method EU has finally pushed their 4th Reaping wave. It does come into the group. Frag DK just taking a bit of damage, nothing too significant, as Method NA is now preparing for their 4th Reaping wave. Here it comes right now. Rune Weaver is pulled from the kitchen as well, and they will be cleaving down some of the maggots, or did they already kill the maggots? There's no maggots with them right now, but they will be proccing their 4th Reaping on top of the boss, and if they don't, they're certainly running out of time to do so.
Yeah, so this is Method NA's way to get back in, as Method NA has 2 deaths, Method EU has 1 death, but they both managed to recover after having some struggle here in this pool. We saw the 1 million DPS actually come out of Shakib on Method NA's side. We saw Fragner actually doing a little bit less damage. They probably had less mobs, or the setup didn't really work out for him, but Method NA just ahead at this point. They finished up the boss, they have to kill the Rune Weaver, they will proc the Reaping, and they have some maggots left here too.
Yeah, so they're actually combining the maggots in the 4th wave of Reaping with the remaining health of the Rune Weaver, that Lieutenant style mob that just has so much health. She's only at half of her maximum HP right now. EU finally downs Rawl. They still have to chew through about 30% of the Rune Weaver, actually exactly 30%. We just saw her enraged there. Immediate Dispel comes out of Xaylia as they look to down this, and then they will Shroud all the way downstairs past the other matron, not deal with any of that floor, and likely pull, as we've seen seen them do before in Agura, the trash on top of Lord and Lady Waycrest.
Yeah, so Method are actually mismatching their reaping a little bit here, as they proc the 80% after the boss, and they now have to single target or single this reaping down without anything else. So it actually cost them a little bit of time here, and now they're the ones who are behind again. As Method you proc the reaping on the boss already, they only had to kill off the Rune Weaver, and they were ready to go down to this next boss fight here. They do both have 83%, so all they have left to do is the trash in this area and the horrors after this boss. So they don't have to do backtracking or anything like that.
And we know there's two really scary pulls coming out. They're going to pull all the trash, as we see here with Lord and Lady, not Lord and Lord Waycrest on Method EU. And Method is going to do the same thing, but then after we have that Gloom Horror pull ×7 on top of Gorak Tool, the final boss. So two scary combinations of pulls coming here. Good Ring of Peace coming down from Mirrors on Method EU to make sure that the mobs are bumped out of the warding candles on the ground. That reduced that damage intake by 50%. Bit of instability here for Method and A right now. They have to be careful of these mobs in Rage, not only to heal up Nerf Clap, who's taking a huge amount of damage, but also to make sure that they interrupt the Soul Volley. That will do a huge amount of damage to the group. So well done by Method and A to stabilize, but Nerf Clap doesn't seem to be out of the woods just yet, as JB just cannot get himself out of this 4-stack right now with another Spit debuff coming in on him. He's ticking down so low, and he goes down. They have no res right now. This is an absolute disaster for Method and A. They need to either reset the boss or just completely wipe it up, as we see Nerf Clap run up the stairs with a bit of debuff down to 1% right now. He dies on the way up as well, but Lighty manages to stay alive and get the res up. Method EU is now coasting as they get to 40% on Lord Waycrest, on Lady Waycrest.
You just see how difficult those pulls are. You saw Method just struggle so hard in phase 1 of the boss, while having all this AoE damage, having the Grievous stack up on everybody, and then all the mobs going to raging at the very same time while fighting the boss. Everyone just taking so much damage, and they're out of battle rests. They had to use both of them on Ral, while Method EU actually still has 1 battle rest left, and they have a Resolute and a DK, so 2 battle rests. Even if Salia dies, they can get him back up. Now, Method and A, this is going to be a disaster for them, as they have to engage the boss fight again. They fortunately did manage to kill up all the trash, so it's only going to be the boss between those two teams, but still, it's a huge difference, as Method and A is already in last phase.
Still, I do agree with that. I know exactly how you feel. 100% agree with it here, as Method EU trying to make short work of Lord Waycrest here, but really going for the more DPS optimal strategy of cleaving both of Lord and Lady Waycrest down at the same time and putting the couple to their final rest. Now, the dangerous pull coming in here, of course, will be the Gloom Horse plus Gorak Tool. Just immense amounts of tanks damage. Actually, we almost saw Method EU completely scuff this pull last time. Now did die at the end, and Zaylia managed to just last second res him as the rest of the mobs died. So hopefully they've cleaned that up just a bit.
Yeah, let's see if Method EU is just risking this pull again. Maybe if they saw that Method EU was wiping on the boss, then maybe they can just pull the horrors without the boss. Let's see. Oh, no,
nope.
they don't. So they actually engage the boss right here with the horrors. Now we're going to see Salia jump on the ledge in the corner here to prevent the horrors from jumping. But if they don't jump, what they're going to do, they're going to hit the tank for a lot of damage.
Yep.
And as soon as they go into raging, it's going to be a problem. So they have to kill them immediately as soon as they're raging, and they have to use the AoE stun and their CC to make sure that nothing's happening.
And the problem is that Death Touch Slaver on the side from Gorak Tool spawned in. Nobody interrupted its Deathlands until the very end when Gingy ran over and gouged it, so it got a almost full uptime stun on someone, decreasing their damage by a fair bit. But finally the CC's coming out. Ring of Peace should be coming out here in just a moment to help out. Indeed, there it is, as now safely sits behind it. All the Gloom Horrors, just how much damage they do as some of them leak into now. His shield wall is active. They have to kill these off by the time that shield wall expires, so they pulled this off perfectly, and now they're in the clear to just finish off Gorak Tool as quickly as possible. Still have 1% trash on the board, but they should be able to clean that up easily for the remaining reaping wave that should come up. Method and A has finally killed Lord and Lady Waycrest and will be heading over to Gorak Tool.
Yeah, this time a lot cleaner on this pull on Method EU side compared to last time around, where they actually had now die. They did manage to recover here, but there's the last four that comes in that they succeed in the back to be sure that they don't proc the last reaping wave, because they don't want to deal with it if they don't have to. Now we see the CC actually breaking on this last four that is marked with a cross marker, and they just have it jump around here. So they want to kill the boss first and then deal with the horde, just making sure they don't get this last reaping wave. But yeah, it's just very clean run again by Method EU, only having this one death, this struggle on Ral where they did this huge pull. Otherwise, they still have a very good time. Not as fast as their time trial time, but still just very fast.
Still quite good as Method and A does the same dangerous pull. We can see a lot of damage coming in on the group, and all eyes on Nerf Clap right now as those last raging horrors are finished off. Looks like they're mostly slayable. The Ring of Peace finally comes down, but unfortunately the half wipe on Lord and Lady Waycrest was just too much to handle. Method EU managed just to sneak out without a full wipe on Rawl. That was so close. I'm sure Sours will talk about that, but they managed to pull out victory in the first map and take the first game.
Yeah, great instincts by Xaylia there to prevent that wipe, and very strong victory here by Method EU on Waycrest Manor. And Sours, that was so close on both teams. Rawl, because they put so much pressure onto themselves, because it's probably one of the easiest bosses in the dungeon, pulling so much trash onto it, so dangerous.
Method EU, since they pulled trash, like with this Rawl pull was crazy, right? So we wanted to, like, Shaki was able to hit the 1 mil, so he wasn't able to hit 1 mil on Rawl the previous attempt of this dungeon. He only hit like 600k, but this time he was able to get there. And then unfortunately, because Method EU pulled trash with Lord and Lady Waycrest, Method NA had no choice but to do the same if they wanted to stay in it. And unfortunately, JB just takes one too many ticks of the spit debuff on him, and some other dots are coming out at him. It's just too much damage for them to handle. And then Method EU, while they almost had they had several very close calls with death on their side, almost wiping to Rawl. Xaylia went so low there, as well as a couple of close encounters on Lord and Lady Waycrest. They were able to only have one death for the whole run, whereas Method NA just had a couple more, and that was just unfortunate for those guys.
I think the debuff that JB had on it was actually the encounter debuff.
It could have been dispelled.
Yes, exactly, the caustic. So that was a mistake. That could have been dispelled, but he opted to just heal through the entirety of it.
It's only Lady who can dispel it.
Yeah, okay, so it should have been dispelled is what I'm saying, but he healed through the entirety of it. Lady didn't dispel it off of him, and that plus 4 ticks of Grievous, I mean, that's just... See ya.
That's bad news bears there, Sloot.
That is.
But I also love the instincts by Xaylia to not immediately go for the battle res when they actually had their death on Rawl. He chose to stabilize the group, take his time. They didn't actually have to lean on frag to be able to get the res off. Stabilized everybody, then got the res off later.
Yeah, it's actually Frag did res him. I don't know why he waited so long.
I don't know if I really
though.
agree about having good instincts. I mean, Frag should have just rezzed him.
He could have just rezzed him straight up, but they had so many mobs that were already raging. I think it would have been better use of their time just to be able to kill everything off really quickly, depending on how much of a resource drain it's going to be for the Unholy DK.
It's not that much for Unholy. It's like...
It's 30 RP.
It's a bolt. But your main damage source is from your runes, so you don't lose anything with a res. You lose like a little bit of single target damage versus AoE damage, which comes entirely from your rune spending.
Let's be honest, he probably just forgot because he has been playing Windwalker. He has been playing Rogue this whole time, and Rogues don't have a battle res.
That's right, they don't.
Game also, 2. Shaman can't be Night Elves.
Shaman can't be Night Elves. All right, we're learning so many new things in this test right here, but we'll be taking a quick break before we go into Game 2, which will be on Motherlode. Don't go anywhere, guys. Method versus Method finals coming right up after this. Welcome back to the Mythic Dungeon International here as we're having our Method v Method Grand Finals, moving us to the Motherlode here. Last Grand Finals we had in the second West week, we had both of these teams going up against each other in the Motherlode when it was teaming here, leading to some really big wipes up in the Research and Development wing. I don't think we're going to be seeing much of them in that area of the dungeon here, Sours, but Sanguine could still be a lot of issues.
Yeah, I mean, we saw 40k do this dungeon with these same affixes deathlessly, so hopefully both teams have put in some research and development into the Motherlode themselves so that they can execute as cleanly as they were able to.
Yeah, and a lot of times, it was very well put there, Sours. A lot of times we've seen these teams going through this, focusing so much on that first wing, that first area here. But Nagura, it was really interesting last time we saw Method NA. They were trying to skirt a couple of these little skitter mobs around some of the other trash to be able to bring them into Azrock. Didn't really work too well for Method NA that time.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that Method EU did the very first time, and they pulled it off. And Method NA just tried to do the same thing and just kind of social pulled another pack and wiped to it. But Method EU also had trouble in this dungeon, and we've seen them before just wipe a lot in the first area, so we'll see.
We'll have to see indeed, as Method EU's got the favor of Twitch chat as we're moving on to Game 2 of the Grand Finals.
So Method EU here on the last game that they would need to close out a perfect season in terms of not dropping a single series, Nagura.
Yeah, so one very interesting thing to note is that Shakib actually kept playing the DK. Well, we've not seen DK in Motherlode before, just mainly because of Sanguine. So if you have a DK, you just have so much initial burst and things die so fast, those low HP mobs like Laborers and stuff, and then you might not be able to see them properly and to typhoon them away from the Peacekeepers. So that's probably the reason why we haven't seen them so much, but Shakib now on DK, so let's see what they can do.
Yeah, but, you know, on the flip side, he has a grip.
Yeah.
Just one. Hopefully it's enough.
And with the Peacekeeper, though.
Yeah, that's very true. Method EU here at 3%, Method NA at 2% as they start rearing up. The fairly large pull that will get close to, if not proc their first reaping here, is Quaking Pulses on the group right now. We've mentioned it a million times. This is the nasty dungeon of the week. We just have a lot of residual damage on the team. Both Bloodlust popped right now. Just we got charges, we got Ice Spritzer going out, we got Grease Guns going out from the mech jockeys. We got an immense amount of tank damage. Tank constantly needs to kite around in circles. We have Quaking, Pulsing on all of that too, just making everything an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, you can see the Peacekeepers on Method and A side just starting to cast in. The Ring of Peace not actually being placed that well. You see the mobs are going to be dying very soon as Shakib just did so much AoE damage here. Now, we're going to see if they manage to not have the Peacekeepers being Sanguine, because if they end up being a Sanguine, especially in a pull like this where you use your Bloodlust for, you just lose so much time.
Yeah, the thugs here are quite low as well as Nerf Clap dips below 50% health. Some of these are going to charge out pretty soon as Inhale Vapors is interrupted on one of them, but not the second, increasing that physical damage done as well. So they have to make sure as when these are low to start kiting around or using that Ring of Peace or of course the Grip or a Taunt Out. They have many tools at their disposal to make sure that you don't get the Sanguine under these Peacekeepers. That's really going to be the name of the game on who's going to start pulling ahead here at that 80% mark on the first boss.
Yeah, so we see the Peacekeepers, the last mobs to be alive, of course, as they have just so much more HP than everything else in this area. You saw Typhoon come out on the Thug here on Method EU side, and also a Rude right afterwards. So definitely Resto Druids are very good to control the mobs that are not Peacekeepers. They have taunts to be able to taunt mobs away if they're low. They have Typhoon. They also have Root. So in case you Typhoon something out and it doesn't die immediately, you can just spam Root it until it dies, just to make sure it doesn't go underneath the Peacekeeper and drop the Sanguine there.
A lot of damage coming in here now as the first Reaping Wave that Method EU is dealing with. Kind of splashes a bit of damage on some of the rogues and on Zaylia as well, coming in just before now gets that first T-Clap off, but finally those Reaping stacks are off of the majority of the group, and Zaylia is able to focus most of his dispels on now. Bit of damage needed, a bit of healing needed from the damage on the rogues as well. Doing well to interrupt all the Ice Spritzers, barely even seeing the debuff pop on the players before it's either interrupted or just hard CC'd for an interrupt. A bit of damage on Nerf Clap as well with Method and A Flechette Tick going out on the group, but they do manage to Typhoon it down and move out as Yoda unfortunately gets charged by one of those thugs and procs that cheat death.
Yes, no cheat death available for Yoda and his set, as both Frag and Gingy still have their cheat death available on Method EU set, but Method and A ahead in percentages if you compare the two trash percentages between those two teams. Now, one thing to know, okay, and there we go. So Method EU just killed those two Peacekeepers and got 6% of trash by killing them, so now they're head to head again. But in this dungeon, it really just matters how fast you can do the trash in this first area here, and then just not wiping later on. And we've seen both of those teams struggle a little bit and have those full kind of team wipes coming in.
Certainly the keys to success here are killing things fast and not wiping. I totally agree with that. Forehead. We get a big pull here coming from Method NA as they line of sighted, but Nerf Clap just getting so low right initially off the pull. The Peacekeeper, of course, starting to cast and be immobile in that area. Lighty going down with just a ton of the residual damage of these groups, just inevitable splash damage on that melee. The battle res has been used, not going to have that available again for about 6 minutes. The entire melee is vulnerable, probably not a lot of defensive CDs available, and of course the cheat death on Yoda not available either, whilst Method EU at 35%, moving quite well through the rest of this trash. Both rogues still have access to their cheat deaths as well.
Now, the problem with these huge pulls is that, first of all, it's very hard to pull all of the mobs because it's scary for the tank. Not only when you gather them up, you have a bunch of laborers that don't have a lot of HP and they're not very scary at all, but when you engage with them, they will actually throw their wrench at you, and it does a lot of initial damage, especially if you pull a lot of them. So at the very start, when you pull them, it's going to be scary for the tank, and then once you did the pull, it's going to be scary for everyone else because of all the vendors, the thugs, and especially when you have a lot of thugs who just charge around randomly. If you get unlucky and 2 or 3 of them charge you at the very same time, you might as well just get one shot.
Too speaky for me, and just as you say that, Shakib actually gets charged by one of those thugs, dipping down to 60%. Mirrors dipping quite low as well as Gingy gets some of the residual damage from the Method EU side here, dealing with their second round of Reaping right now, plus a bit of extra trash, wanting to always be as efficient as possible, combining Reaping with as much as they can handle. Grave Bolts going off left and right here, but nothing too bad for them as they down the dangerous part of the second round of Reaping. Kind of nasty pulse goes off as Zaylia gets charged at the same time, and now Div's quite low. Fortunately, Zaylia is able to catch up on the healing from the 3 thugs. That was a really poorly timed quaking. Nothing the team could really do about that plus charge combo, but Method and A, 46% right now, has killed off their second Reaping, 48% for Method EU, and they're going to pick up some more.
Yeah, both of those teams so close in percentage at this point. Method A on their way to the next pull as well. Now, unfortunately, one of the Peacekeepers healed a little bit on Method and A's side. Didn't heal to full HP though, so it wasn't too tragic. Well, Method EU pulling the next Peacekeepers. 3 Peacekeepers here, a bunch of thugs and some laborers. As you can see, the taunt coming out of Zaylia here on the left side, taunting this laborer away just to make sure that the Sanguine is spawning outside. So very well done by them.
Really well done indeed, as Method and A does that kind of weird skip that we saw earlier as well. They crowd control everything on the side there, and then they use a kind of combination of Shadow Meld to make sure that they only pull at least what they want here, majority of them being Peacekeepers, while clearing the trash before the coin-operated Crowd Pummeler, the first boss of the dungeon. Method EU now at 49% on the board, trying to finish off this last Peacekeeper. I think there's actually 2 of them in there, looking to proc their 60%, their third Reaping Wave. Now, we do know the kind of end goal of this is most of the teams will try to get that 4th Reaping Wave and drag that over onto the boss.
Yeah, so one thing to note here is that if Method and A is actually using this kind of... now actually dropping very low, proccing his Trinket, but he did manage to recover after proccing his Trinket, so Sally got him back up, but not going to be available to him for a long time as it is on cooldown. It's kind of like a cheap death mechanic as the rogues have as well. Now Method and A, as I wanted to talk about with the DK, now Method EU has shown this before. On the first boss, they were waiting for the Bloodlust to be ready and then pull a bunch of neutral mobs on top of the boss to be able to get this huge damage increase from the DK and just kill the boss so fast. Now we'll see if Method and A does this as well. Obviously we have Sanguine this time around, so it's going to be a little bit more risky.
Yeah, certainly risky. I think in the previous map they just ended up sticking to only the Reaping Wave and just trying to bolster Shakib's damage in that sense. We'll see if they decide to be a bit more aggressive, because they do know what their the opponents that they're up against right now. Method and EU still working to kill the last of this Reaping Wave right now as they try to just pick up more trash as they go along. There's a few thugs and mech jockeys in here with 1 refreshment vendor on the side right now. Finally, the majority of the Reaping dies off. Method and A has now procced their 3rd Reaping Wave and are pulling it into their own respective trash. So definitely favor of Method EU here right now, as they've already dealt with their 3rd Reaping Wave. They're ahead of trash by 7%, and they don't have a death on the board along with the battle res available.
Yeah, it just seemed like this kind of strategy that Method and A was doing right there, where they had the CC go in, got some of the Peacekeepers just hiding into the first boss room. It seems like it really isn't that efficient. Not only are you backtracking, but you also need to set up the CC. It needs setup time, and everything that takes time to set up, to kite around, to backtrack, it's just, it costs you overall. So Method EU just going ahead just because they're doing more efficient pulls at this point, and they're the ones who have almost 10% more trash here.
Yep, 10% more trash, and this should be enough trash here to proc their 4th Reaping Nagura, I'm pretty sure. Now, whether or not they do what we saw 40k do and try to rush ahead and drop it with a Shadow Meld by spawning the Reaping back here, because it's just not really as worth for them. They don't have that Unholy DK, so they won't benefit as much on the boss as would Method and A side here. So another Peacekeeper coming in here for Method and A. Hopefully their last pull for that 4th Reaping, it should be with 4 Peacekeepers in there, but that's going to take them a while to chisel through, while Method EU is now at 74%. Assassin, mech jockey, and of course the refreshment vendor about to die right now. Another good taunt away with the refreshment vendor, making sure it doesn't die on top. Assassin's about to go down too. There's the taunt from Mears on the side, making sure that the Sanguine under the Peacekeeper does not happen.
Yeah, we saw on Method and A side they also had a grip come out of Shakib to make sure one of those vendors doesn't die below those Peacekeeper. That would be a disaster for them because they have 4 of them. So if you have a Sanguine pool spawned below 4 Peacekeeper, that definitely costs you so much time. So Method EU, on the other hand, already engaging that boss here with their 80% Reaping Wave. They don't have their Bloodlust ready. I do believe we saw the last time of Method EU just them saving their Bloodlust and use it later on for a trash pull after this boss.
Yeah, either the trash pull or something combined with Azeroth. So certainly don't have that available for 80 seconds on either side right now. Method EU, though, already working on coin-operated Crowd Pummeler, 83% on the board for that. They've already killed the 4th Reaping Wave. They didn't even try to skip it with Shadow Meld or anything. They just cleaved it right on top of the boss. Huge damage coming out of now, of course, We know the Prot Warrior tanks, but especially Fragments there with that massive rogue damage. And now well healing through the static shock from Azalea, as he just, every opportunity he gets, he runs in, gets a bit of damage in cat form, heals the group, trusted his HOTS, his healing over time will do the rest of the work, and then just goes back in for more damage. Method and Ace still sitting at 70%, finally now chewing through the rest of these Peacekeepers and getting ready to combine their 4th Reaping with the coin-operated Crowd Pummeler.
Yeah, this really just took them so long. Those 4 Peacekeepers, just everything, it's kind of taking so much longer than Method used that. They were head-to-head at the start, and then as soon as it did this kind of secede thing and this Peacekeeper pull, they just fell behind. But now they're in 83% too. They're proc to 80% Reaping Wave, and they're on their way to pull the Crowd Pummeler. Now, they don't have their Bloodlust ready yet, but they want to use it on this boss, especially because of the Reaping Wave, because of Jackie, because of the Unholy DK.
Yeah, I mean, they're taking advantage of it now, but I mean, most of the damage has already come out by the looks of it. I don't know if it's worth popping that Bloodlust at this point. It still has 9 seconds on the board. Bit of scary damage there at the beginning, too. Yoda dipped quite low, and they just had a really bad quaking time with all of the mobs coming in at the same time. But here we go, another quaking coming in just after the static hit. So a lot of work cut out for JB to heal the team back up, as they do indeed finally commit to their Bloodlust. A lot of damage coming in on the side of Method EU as well, as Azalea struggles to heal everybody back above that 20% threshold from the static hit.
Azalea actually completely out of mana, as he was probably spamming Sunfire and Moonfire on the boss while he was throwing those bombs on top of the boss, just trying to get every single point of damage that he can on the boss. Now, this might actually cost him, because he's completely out of mana at this point, and you see the dot on everybody just dropping everyone low. Now they have to kill the boss before the next static pulls, because Azalea can't heal the people up at this point anymore.
Yeah, it should be okay, though. I mean, they're at 4% right now. They should have no problem doing that. One last insult to injury quaking comes up, as they will be able now to drop Fish Feast, because they will get all his mana back while the rest of the team heals up instead of waiting to be healed. But you're right, actually, they do end up getting the final static and unnecessarily proccing Fragments' cheat death there. So won't have that available for a while now, as they rear up to do a fairly substantial pull, 5 pull probably, with that Bloodlust available to them. Method and A still working away at coin-operated Crowd Pummeler, 27% on the board for them, but also 2 deaths.
Yeah, so they do the same pull as they did the last time around with the Bloodlust here, pulling 3 packs together, and not pulling that Patrol and the other pack. They're just going to do that one later. But yeah, just using their Bloodlust here, making sure they deal with this. The problem is, once they drop low, once you have the Sanguine from those different kind of HP mobs, then you need to use your Ring of Pieces, and there's also just a lot of tank damage coming in from those.
Yeah, huge tank damage coming in, and huge tank damage going out as well, as now just claps his way to victory there. Fragments just surpasses him at the end. They only pulled 4 packs there, if I'm not mistaken, because they did not pull the Patrol here, consisting of a Sapper and an Earth Shaper, which they combined with the double Earth Shaper and Sapper just on the ledge above them. So another 7 mob pull here. Nothing too bad, and they had a bit of Bloodlust left over for that, so they got about 5-6 seconds of Bloodlust for the remainder of this pull too. Just need to make sure to interrupt those Rock Lances, and it should be no problem for the tanks, as Method and A has finished off the coin-operated Crowd Pummeler. Having a quick drink so JB gets his mana back. Everybody's nice and healthy, and they're going to do an aggressive pull as well, but they don't have Bloodlust available.
Yeah, they do have the DK though, so it's probably going to make up for not having the Bloodlust, as DKs usually do just huge amounts of AoE damage on those kind of pulls if he's got his cooldowns ready. Because DKs are, they need their cooldowns to be able to do damage, but as it seems like that he does have it ready, we see Nerf Trap actually drop very, very low as some of those casts go through and not being interrupted.
Yeah, the Rock Lance is so dangerous. He actually procs his Bonsomni's Bargain Trinket right now. Huge amounts of damage coming out of Shakib indeed, and not only did they do a no Bloodlust pull, but they did a 5-pack pull that Method EU only did 4 of with their Bloodlust. So very boastful pull here, and indeed carried by that Unholy DK damage. But Method EU doesn't care, as they run up the hill now with that mass stealth and engaged Azarok, the second boss of the dungeon.
Yeah, so Method EU on 99% trash, so they only need to, either they're going to kill a rat right after this boss, or they're going to pull one of those elementals on top of Azarok at the very end. Now we've seen 2 teams so far already fail with this pull, where they wanted to pull an elemental on top of the boss, but they kind of social aggroed another pack with the mini boss in, and they wiped it. We've actually seen it from Method and A as well. So we will see if Method EU just decides to play it a little bit safer, decides to pull this boss by itself, and then just later on goes ahead and pulls a rat just to get this last percentage. And Method and A, though, missing 4%, so they're probably going to have to do this pull.
The Method EU DPS rocking the rest of those Earth Ragers down and making sure to get rid of them on the fight, as Method and A indeed is at 83% on the boss, and you're right, Nigura, it has 96% trash, so they will probably once again attempt that same pull, as we see the Stone Fury being pulled here by Zaylee on the side of Method EU. I believe they obviously only need one of them, since they are at 99%, so they pull it up to Azarok, and and we'll get ready to cleave that down with the boss when it's time. I believe Azalea rooted it in place. Yeah, he's casting Entangling Roots right now. Not sure if it's going to be on that or on the Earth Rage. It's actually on the Earth Rager, so one of them is paralyzed in the back. That's the trash mob they need for the Reaping, and the Earth Rager is, of course, Entangle rooted by Azalea right beside the boss as the team spreads out now for Quaking.
Yeah, I kind of like this. He pulled the mob whenever he had time to pull it, and now they're just gonna see it until they want to kill it. So they're choosing it, pick and choose when they want to deal with this Stone Fury to proc their Reaping. Of course, they want to have the boss lower because they want to be able to Shadow Melt the Reaping wave off. So just gonna keep his seat there in the corner, wait until the boss lower, then engage it, proc the Reaping. And now Method NA, they want to do the same thing, but they probably need 2 Stone Furies. I don't think one is gonna be enough for them, so they definitely have to do something different.
Might even need some of the small spiderlings, the shale nail biters as we called them earlier. So definitely, and don't have really the time or the not the coordination, but the time or really the GCDs to spend constantly CCing all that many mobs. So they're probably going to pull it a bit later on top of Azarok and cleave it down with the rest of the boss, trying to combine it with their 5th Reaping and running down. Azarok, 15% here for Method EU and 32% for Method NA as Method EU rears up to try and finish the Stone Fury. It has already been pulled 50% now for the team, trying to kill everything at the same time so they can lightly just minecart right down the hill straight to Ruxa Flux Flame's platform and get ready to use that delicious Shadow Meld.
Yeah, Method NA not that far behind when it comes to boss damage and boss HP, but still 2 deaths on board of Method NA, while Method used 0 deaths so far. Very clean run by them. 100% trash. They did Shadow Melt off the Reaping Wave. Actually, maybe they didn't Shadow Melt it yet because they need to skip the trash here and then Shadow Melt the trash plus the Reaping. As we can see them just run through here, now going ahead, just getting aggro from all the mobs. And once everybody is through, they are going to use the Shadow Melt. It's kind of have a double skip, Reaping plus the mobs, and then they're going to be ready to engage the boss.
Yeah, so at this point, it's just Tyrannical Boss, 2 in a row here for Method EU as they drop the majority of the Reaping. One of them does sneak in a bit. It's marked with a skull in the back, as you can see. It just comes over. It's not a substantial mob eater, not a Lieutenant-style mob. It's actually from that Stone Fury that they pulled on top of the boss. They just couldn't outrange it in time, so no problem for them. They'll just be able to easily cleave it down as chemical burns do go out on the tank and the healer here now. Was not able to spell Reflected, so just has to kind of eat the damage. Azalea will heal him through it. Method NA now, actually, they didn't pull the Stone Furies in the end. I guess they just didn't want to try that again after the disaster in the last one, so they ran down to the R&D wing and are dealing with some of the weapons testers there and the Mastermind. Then they'll be right at Rix's platform as well.
Yeah, interesting to see a pull here in the R&D wing. The only other team we've seen to do with these affixes was Learn to Fly. Learn to Fly did a bunch of different pulls here in this dungeon and seemed like it wasn't very efficient because it slowed them down so much. But Method NA only has to pull 1 pack, while Learn to Fly actually had to pull a bunch more. Now, Method NA procs their 100% Reaping Waves too. They're gonna go ahead, do the same thing as Method EU. Just go to the boss, have JB actually going down. This is a big problem because JB needs to die closer if he wants to get a rest. So this might be a disaster for Method NA, actually.
Yeah, it's actually really disastrous because the Masterminds do have True Sight, so he can't just kind of kitty form and prowl back to the rest of the group. Hopefully they've made it over to Rix's platform. It looks like a lot of the mobs are running back, but JB's already worried about the Masterminds making their way back now that the rest of the group has reset them, so he might need to end up just dying by himself and hopefully getting a res from Lighty as needed. But seems he's found his way around the edge where there are no Masterminds present and is able to get back to the group without needing to die yet again. But a lot of time lost here as he needed to die res and actually did die in the end, so not sure if that's in Rage of Lighty. They'll have to see. Nothing but problems here for Method NA as he releases and has to try again. Method EU cleanly going through Rixa Flux Flame down to 23% now.
Oh no.
Oh no. Boom goes the dynamite.
Anyway, Method EU just all the way on the boss already. 0 deaths on their side as Method NA is still just trying to get JB back. This is such a huge problem for them as they also have the Reaping mobs here just getting into combat. The problem is, I mean, they do have a rest on Lighty, right? They have the Monk who has the rest, but JB needs to be closer. He needs to be 40 yards range and he also needs to be line of sight. So this is going to be a problem for JB just to be able to get back. I feel like the whole team is just going to suicide now and get back to help him out because he's just not able to get in rage and die there. So Method EU already down Rix at this point. The only thing between Method EU and winning the 3rd cup is the last boss.
Yep, so Lighty, Nerf, Clap have indeed self-killed and released at Azrok's platform, run over to JB to help him out with those reaping mobs, and as a triplicate unit will be running over to get to the Rixa's platform, something that Method EU has already accomplished. 0 deaths on the board as they heroically charge up the hill, trying to avoid as many of the True Sight from the War Machines as possible. They will sneak by here. Now will likely pull the War Machine to the side. It did see him as they run up the platform and will be shadow melding all of this aggro off.
Yeah, so once the Shadow Melt here, of course, you don't need to kill any more trash. They only have to kill the boss here. Now, they still have 2 minutes cooldown on their Bloodlust, but it should be coming back up at the very end of the phase, as this boss takes quite a while, especially in the tyrannical setting. Now, you do have the first phase, which lasts until 50%, then intermission phase, and then the last phase when the boss comes back down again. You gotta watch out for Zalia here, as he's gonna get all of the missiles, because they only target ranged, or they favor ranged DPS, and he's the only ranged in their group.
Yep, so Mogul Razdunk 83% right now. Method and 8 has finally completed their great adventure and gotten over to Rixa's platform right now, ready to pull it. One last insult to injury. Quaking does come out on top of the team, but they do manage to feast up and will be pulling the boss at this point. They are, of course, an entire boss and quarter behind of Method EU. So Method EU has everything in their cards right now to win this and really just have a completely perfect season in terms of not dropping a single series.
Yeah, that was a very risky charge coming in by now here from Method EU, as he charged into a missile and he charged into a Gatling gun, but he did manage to survive as he's a Proud Warrior and he's pretty much immune to damage at this point. And now we see Method EU, they're on 66% on the boss, on 50% he goes into the intermission phase. We see the Quaking come out. Now Quaking can be dangerous on this fight because sometimes you really want to be stacked, especially when you dodge the Gatling gun, when you dodge the missiles. So if you get a Quaking in a bad timing and you have to spread out, maybe someone actually accidentally gets hit by a Gatling gun or gets hit by a missile.
Mogul Razdunk 55%, about to have his transition phase right now for Method EU. We'll have to deal with the 2 Sky Scorchers. Nothing, obviously, that they haven't seen or done before, nor that we haven't seen either. So it should be pretty easy for them to deal with that. Method and A still working away at Rixa. Everything seems to finally be going in their favor, but I mean, just that skip just didn't work out for them. Even at that point, they were falling a bit behind. I'm sure Sarah's going to talk to us about a bit about that once we get there. But they were just falling slightly more and more behind. They started the first boss late. They started Azrok even later than that. They did what is, in my opinion, not as efficient of a trash route. Of course, they were going to the R&D wing instead, Nagura, of pulling some of those Stone Furies.
Yeah, it definitely felt like Method A already was behind, even when that happened, right? So they had 2 more deaths compared to Method U's 0 deaths, and they were also behind just in general on trash percentage, on boss HP. So even with this disaster, if Method U just cleans up this whole dungeon with 0 deaths and without any trouble on this boss, then no matter what Method A would have done, they still would have won just because the route of Method U was better and they just played it cleaner. Now we see Frag actually dropping the cheat death here as the boss goes down to trigger the last phase. They do have the Bloodlust ready. Thankfully, Rogues just have cheat death and they don't die whenever something happens to them. Anyway, they use the Bloodlust here and all they have to do is melt the boss as he's on 40% HP.
40% HP and dropping quickly here as they're halfway through their Bloodlust. Rixa Flux Flame at 12% for Method and A. Hopefully they're going to kill that before Method EU finishes off the last boss here. Looks like they will, but 30% on Mogul Razdunk, and you know, I think the cheat death proc was just kind of for showmanship there. I'm sure, of course, it wasn't an accident anyway.
Of course. Now we see Method EU 20%. The boss is about to go down as they still have a little bit of Bloodlust. That of course you can see all of the DPS just melting the boss. The boss is dropping lower and lower and lower, and this is going to be such a clean run for them to win this 3rd cup, right? Having 0 deaths in this Motherlode in a very difficult dungeon with Sanguine. Just people have been complaining about this dungeon with the affixes on Twitter for this whole week, basically. So Method U just having 0 deaths here, just playing so well.
And of all people, they've constantly tweeted how much they hate this dungeon, so it's a very fitting way for them to finish it up, and that's exactly what they'll do here as Mogul Razdunk hits his final percentages of health, and Method EU cap off a perfect season, not dropping a single series as they win the grand final in West Cup number 3, 2-0.
Method EU takes the 3rd Western Cup in a row. And as you said, Sloot, they've never dropped a series, only dropping 3 games in almost 30. Out of that, they've only dropped 3 games out of 3 Western Cups. Simply amazing performance here by Method EU, cleaning it up on Motherlode with no deaths whatsoever. And Sours, that was just good play.
Perfect for Method EU. I mean, what can you say? Fat Shark, yes, got the world first 0-death 19 Motherlode in this tournament. Method got the world second. So hopefully that's not the case for them in the raid this tier. But for 0-death Motherlode, you can't be happier if you're these guys. They executed everything perfectly, including the pull onto Azeroth. That was that no team until this point has been able to do successfully. So everything was perfect. So you see Zalia's over here standing in the corner. He gets the Stone Fury, so none of those guys are really social with each other. It feels like it when you pull them normally in the dungeon because they're all so close to each other. But if you pull it just right, you can get just one, and then boom, Entangling Root, your job's done. And then they're able to just clean up the rest of the boss, and then eventually the Stone Fury perfectly. And 0 deaths here, 0 deaths throughout the rest of the dungeon. It's smooth sailing for these guys. I'd be very happy with their performance, not only today in this dungeon, just in every series and in all these tournaments so far.
Yeah, without a doubt, and it's shown how much the practice has made perfection here for this team as they do take that 3rd tournament cup and are going to be our #1 seed going into the LAN on this one. So very strong performance there. They did drop 2 games to Method NA last tournament and then only 1 game to Abracadabra this one. So a completely phenomenal performance going into it, and all those points, Sloot, going into the LAN, it's just going to be so big for them with seeding.
Yeah, I mean, seeding's going to be huge, and everybody's going to do anything they can to avoid facing them in the LAN, but they're going to have first seeding. It's going to be really comfortable for them. Of course, we do have our top 4 set now, at least for the West region, so we still have a bit of holding our breath to see exactly what happens in the East region next week, and I'm excited to see that. But, I mean, Method EU, dominant performance. They earned their position. They got their 420 points overall, if I'm not mistaken, and we'll be seeing them in the first seed.
That's right, and the points earned for this cup based off of their own placement. Method EU taking that crown, a prize of 140 points here, times 3 for their total standings here. And at this point, you know, all the rest of the points are going to be especially relevant for the global finals later in the year, so it's very important to watch out for that one. But at this point, Eastern region coming in, we have a couple teams that are going to be competing for that 3rd and 4th place spot on the side of Buff War, a company, Black Mamba, full screen maybe. So there is definitely going to be some good competition coming up for that next weekend here, Nagura.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to look forward to see the Eastern region as well, especially between Buff War and a company, and again, this rivalry between Team D and Battle for Champ as they're sitting on 240 points each. It will depend who gets the first seeding next time around from the East region as well. And yeah, I just want to say again, just the West region, just showing just how competitive this region is, and just showing so many good performances from different kind of teams. Even teams that just qualified for 1 tournament, just doing so well, like for example, Games Revolted today. Just good showing from the whole region, really.
It was very well played, and very well played to our top 4 teams, because they will be going to the LAN to compete for the $100,000 prize pool later in the summertime. So very big for them, and very interesting to start seeing as we now know who our top 4 are going to be here. We've also seen, Sloot, a couple of close calls between maybe not Buff War, Nerf Rogue, and a company, and some of the newcomers going into the region in that one. So we really have a lot more open of an Eastern region than I'd say the West.
Yeah, I mean, relatively, you still kind of have the 2.
You still have top 2.
Yeah, you still have the top 2 powerhouses there, but there's certainly more of a mix-up going on in the mid-region rather than the you know, miracle for Abracadabra to not make a top 4 kind of thing that we had here, and a 40K in a very prime position to make that top 4 as well. So it's definitely going to be a pretty big mix-up coming in the East region this weekend. Yeah,
and we'll have to see how after that last final cup goes down, how all those teams will be improving for the final as the LAN comes up, as they'll have a lot of time to be able to practice and prepare. So thank you so much for joining us for the 3rd and final Western Cup of Season 1. Method EU has been on an absolute tear going through this tournament and taking the series to win their 3rd championship in a row here. Be joining us next weekend for the final weekend for the East, as we'll see the top 4 teams from that region and who will be joining their Western colleagues at LAN. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful night. This has been the Mythic Dungeon International.